Welcome to You Brew Kombucha. Today I'm going to share some tips on how to use spent tea leaves to feed your SCOBY hotels. If you're a kombucha homebrewer and you use loose leaf tea to brew your kombucha, you might be wondering if there's anything you can do to reuse or avoid those spent tea leaves from going to waste after you finish brewing your batches of kombucha. And something that I have been doing pretty consistently is to re-steep those spent tea leaves and use them to feed my SCOBY hotels. So at the end of brewing those batches of kombucha, I'm left with a bunch of spent tea leaves that I don't really have much use for aside from, potentially throwing them away or composting them. So I like to re-steep them with some hot water and some more sugar and use that re-steeped sweet tea to feed my SCOBY hotels. So the way I do that is really, it's very similar to the process of brewing kombucha. I just get some hot water boiling and I will add, you can really just eyeball this for around, I'm making about less than a gallon of SCOBY hotel food here, which is basically just sweet tea. I'm gonna use maybe a cup of sugar that I'll add into this vessel, this steeping pitcher that I like to use. And then there's obviously already some spent tea in the pitcher that I'm going to use and re-steep. But if you have extra loose leaf tea, go ahead and maybe just add another tablespoon so that there's some fresh unsteeped tea along with your steeped tea. This is totally optional. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But as you know, the SCOBY, the kombucha culture, feeds on the ingredients in tea and sugar. So the more you can give it something to eat, the longer you can kind of leave your SCOBY hotels alone and let them do their thing without needing to check on them so frequently. So now that that water is boiled, I'm going to add it to the pitcher and get that sugar dissolved. Since this is a plastic steeping vessel, it's usually used for cold brewing tea, and I love using it for cold brewing tea as well. But because it is plastic, just to avoid any risk of it cracking because of the boiling water, I only like to fill it up around halfway and just stir it around to let that sugar dissolve. And just add some room temperature water to fill up the rest of the pitcher. And then I will go ahead and just let that steep for, I usually like to let it steep for maybe 20 minutes to half an hour or so, just to really get as much of the tea extracted from the leaves as possible. And then from there, I'll let it just cool to room temperature before adding it to each of my SCOBY hotels. And that'll be how I feed them with sweet tea to keep them well fed and happy, and producing strong acidic starter tea to inoculate my kombucha batches. The sweet tea has been steeping for about 20 minutes and it has now cooled to room temperature. So I'm gonna go ahead and add them to my 3 SCOBY hotels. And if you're not familiar with what a SCOBY hotel is and how to build one and why you might want to have them on hand, I have a whole other video that goes through that process, so I will link that down in the description box below. And if you want a basic recipe for SCOBY hotel food that doesn't use spent tea leaves, if you just want a basic sweet tea recipe for feeding your SCOBY hotels, I will also share a link to that video where I walk you through my basic recipe. But this way, I feel better about knowing that I'm really getting as much as I can out of the tea leaves that I use, and I'm not being wasteful. Try to get every last bit out of all of my ingredients so that they serve a purpose. And that way, our hotels are well fed with sweet tea. They'll continue to ferment and acidify this sweet tea, and I'll have a continuous source of strong acidic starter tea to inoculate my first fermentation batches of kombucha moving forward. I'm also gonna take just a quick moment to do some shameless self-promotion and talk about my book, The Kombucha Crafter's Logbook. At the end of the logbook where you can track all of your kombucha batches, there's a section that walks you through SCOBY hotel care and maintenance tips, troubleshooting tips, and there is also a SCOBY log, so you can keep track of all of your SCOBY maintenance actions, like whenever you feed them or if you trim your SCOBYs. That way it's all in one place for you to keep track of if that's helpful to you. The book is available on Amazon now, so I can add a link to the description box down below if you're interested in checking it out. And if you have any questions, you can always find more resources at youbrewkombucha.com. Happy brewing!